Before we get started, I want to thank our amazing sponsors, Gem City Fine Foods. Find them at gemcityfinefoods.com and browse their incredible selection of all gluten-free and nut-free desserts, and in some cases even vegan desserts. These aren't just good for being gluten-free and nut-free. They are just flat-out good desserts. Go and check them out and use the promo code WFC25 for 25% off of your online order. Check them out today, gemcityfinefoods.com. And we'd also like to thank Pfluger's Bacon. They are the bacon that we used all week long. We used it in the bacon category that we competed with Chef Chris Mask. You'll hear from him a little bit later on. And we used it in all of our cooking demos, as well as just cooking some up and handing it out to folks. Everybody loved it. It's an incredible product. You want to make sure you check them out at Pfluger's Bacon with an S, pflugersbacon.com. Why do we cook? We cook for food, for family, and for friends. We cook to bring people together.
Honey, that looks good. Pardon my fork.
You guys, welcome to this live edition of Pardon My Fork, coming at you from the third day of the World Food Championships.
It's been a really, really great, very busy experience.
Very busy. And of course, joining me is the venerable Chris Mask. How are you doing, my friend?
No hangover yet to report.
Hey,
I'm
that's
a realist.
Yet.
They've been hooking us up with some booze, haven't they?
Every day I've been here, I've got a bottle of booze.
Yep.
The
From who?
jalapeno spirits yesterday when we were cooking in bacon.
Right.
The brown sugar bourbon, which is like candy to
Yeah.
drink.
Yes.
Very
That's
sweet.
fantastic and has just trouble written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't need to be extradited back to Canada as a result of my antics in downtown Dallas from that, but I'll take the chance.
So,
That's right.
what if you made a brown sugar bourbon glaze to go on Pfluger's smoked bacon?
Oh, yes. One of our sponsors of this show, Pfluger Bacon. I think that would be a fantastic glaze for it. As a matter of fact, you hooked me up with some maple syrup and some honey, and we used that to candy some duck bacon for your round in the bacon category.
Yeah, when we were doing that for the duck bacon, that's the one thing that we definitely did. I think that if you're going to candy the bacon, though, you're going to want to burn off a bit of that alcohol to get that harshness out first.
I agree.
And then maybe add a little bit of pepper to it just to give it a little bit of a je ne sais quoi bite.
yeah.
If I can use my Francais for a little bit.
As we say on the show, whenever you say something French, you have to say it the French way, je ne sais quoi.
That's going hardcore Quebecois for me.
And Chris, before we get into it too much, let's talk about you for a second. You are from a little town in Ontario, Canada, right?
Yeah, it's just outside of Sudbury would be the major center. So that's where the big meteor impact site was. And they actually, in Sudbury, history that kind of ties into the area here. That's where they trained the astronauts for the first moon landing.
Really?
Was in Sudbury because the landscape was so similar to the surface of the moon.
I didn't know
I was
about
about to ask, since there was a meteorite that hit there, maybe there's some like superheroes that are local to you, but
well, no, actually the comic book world in Canada did get Big Nick, which was a local superhero.
Big Nick,
yeah.
Okay.
And,
I went to high school with a guy named Big Nick.
Well, there's, if you mispronounce it, then that's where it starts getting a little dicey. But they created a superhero character in the comic book world named Big Nick, based on that. And the one thing about the mining community in Sudbury and just with everything that's happened there, there's a neutrino lab, which is deep and down into the earth, and it measures the certain rays and particles that come in from space. And from the research that was done there a few years ago, somebody won a Nobel Prize for their research there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you see, Sudbury does have a lot more than just black rock.
Well, and they also have a very fun show called Off The Chip Wagon. You can see Chris Mask on that. Is it weekly?
It is a weekly episodic series, which is done on a community cable channel. Mm-hmm. But anybody who has Eastlink across Canada, coast to coast, can tune in and watch it. It's the highest rated original programming on Eastlink. We're going into season 4 next Wednesday. And we've already been greenlit for season 5. It's
great job.
A show where I get to go around and try chip stands and convenient food from right across Northern Ontario. And as I like to say, you can tune in to Eastlink 610 and watch me get fatter each week in HD.
So for our American listeners out there, explain what a chip stand is.
Chip stand would be like kind of a food truck, but not on wheels. So any kind of convenient food like that, that's where we kind of gravitate to. And originally when we started this, 4 seasons ago, we thought that it was going to be about the food. And we get some incredible, unique, different things. Like this year we had a Dorito crusted corn dog. Was one of the things that we got to do. And we've had like the full deep fried Mars bars, and shepherd's pie is, I'm not sure how big that is down in the States, but we went to a vegan food truck, Sarah's food truck in Elliott Lake, they make a shepherd's pie poutine.
Wow.
And that's the first time I've ever had anything like that.
Shepherd's pie poutine?
Yeah.
Well, we don't do a lot of shepherd's pie, but, the one thing that sticks out in my mind with us and shepherd's pie is that smoked shepherd's pie that we made. I made a shepherd's pie mix up, but we used buffalo meat, and, everything else was pretty traditional though, wasn't it? Yeah. And we did it in Dutch oven on the smoker and just ran it the entire day, like stirring frequently, making sure that smoke flavor was infused down into it. And then we got little puff pastry cups. We cheated. We got pre-made puff pastry cups and filled those for just one bite.
Shepherd's pie bites. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's the closest I've ever gotten to like making a real, not a real shepherd's pie, obviously, but my own take on a shepherd's pie.
Well, one of the episodes that we filmed for this season, the local farmers market in Sudbury had asked me to go and do a cooking demo because I do competitive barbecue with our Broken Antler barbecue team. And out of the 7 dishes that I did over the course of a couple hours there, I got to work with a lot of wild game. So I had alpaca meatballs.
Wow.
I had a beautiful salt-crusted bison that I had served up. And I'd also thrown in a couple vegan dishes as well for people who just wanted to have that vegan option. The cauliflower buffalo wings, by the time you smoke them, the color on them, the caramelization, when they just started to get crispy on the edge, beautiful. I mean, you wouldn't know you weren't eating a chicken wing.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a real testimony to how much flavor you can add by charring and smoking something.
Oh, absolutely.
And marinating, obviously, too. But
yeah, wood plays a big factor into it. And for people who are just getting into barbecue, I mean, things like these pellet smokers.
Right.
You hear a lot of backlash from the hardcore barbecue people saying, they're nothing but a wood-fired oven. But if you're very limited for space and you're just trying to get into smoking and you want to get your feet wet, this is an inexpensive way. You can get the little pucks so you don't have to buy the big bags of pellets.
Oh, the Bradley smokers, I think, uses the pucks,
It's a way to get into it.
Yeah. Although I do have to shout out our other sponsor. If you're local to Oregon, GBX Custom Cookers is going to make an incredible smoker for you. Any kind of a cooker, as a matter of fact. The Santa Maria grills, over the fire pit grills, hibachis. They'll do just about anything you want. Check them out at facebook.com/GBX Custom Cookers. And speaking of cooking, Chris, you cooked with me yesterday. We did a little impromptu demo. And it was the most bizarre situation because we were over here by the Innovative Group trailer, which is where we're recording right now. So big thanks to them for letting us do it. And they had the setup for a cooking demo, but people had not shown up to do it. And for whatever reason, I said, well, I'll step in to do it. And then I sent you a text message. And like the gem you are, man, you texted me back and you said, hey, I'm here to cook, so let's do it.
I don't think the Gentleman's Club was open at that time of the day yet. So,
it's Texas. You'd be surprised.
I feel like it was sort of an episode of Chopped or Master Chef where we gave you a myriad of ingredients, seemingly unconnected, and you guys made a fabulous dish.
Oh, it crushed. I could not believe how good that was.
Yeah, so tell us what you made.
I'm one of these people who in the kitchen, I like to think outside the box. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing. So given the ingredients that were on the table and the sponsor stuff that they wanted to have featured, we ended up making a chickpea orchetti, which is a little thumbprint Italian pasta. But I crushed some potato chips into the dough.
What flavor potato chips?
They were the Crawdations.
Yeah, Crawtators, the Zap
Crawtators,
spicy
yes.
Cajun Crawtators, which are so good, by the way. They're shockingly good.
But I thought that it would just naturally fit in there because it had that bit of a briny taste, right? Because another ingredient that we had was this crumble that we put on top of the orchetti, which was breadcrumbs that we sauteed with some bacon aioli for that little bit of fat. And we put anchovy paste and lemon in it.
Yeah.
And the sauce was pancetta, shallots, tomatoes, put a little garlic in there. We used tomato juice for our base. And then a little ketchup, Chipotle ketchup from Canada, the twisted tomato ketchup.
Red Gold tomatoes.
And red gold tomatoes, we're a part of it. That's where we got our tomato juice from.
Well, it was really, really great. Andy,
I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah, you talked about how amazing it was. Like, who would have thought?
Everybody talked about how good it was. We had chefs and barbecue people coming by. Someone from the name escapes me now, but they're not a sponsor of the show, so we'll skip them. Anyways, a rep from a couple of different places. As a matter of fact, when we went on Jay Dakota's show last night, we did a quick 15-minute segment with him, and he tried that.
And it was cold.
And it was cold, but I think he was stunned. He ate the whole thing post-haste, by the way. Like, he shoveled that into his mouth. He was just like, oh, man, you guys came up with this?
In 30 minutes, it's tough to come up with an authentic pasta dough. So, I mean, this was more of almost like a gnocchi consistency, more like a little dumpling. Because, I mean, it was also thicker. We didn't have anything to roll it out. We didn't have any of the rolling pins or anything like that.
Right.
But as long as you can think on your feet and you just put flavors together in your head, anything's possible. There's a great book out there. It's called The Flavor Matrix. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or not, but it shows you different foods and the affinities that certain flavors have with those foods.
Oh, we have something really similar to that called the Flavor Bible that we use.
The Flavor Bible's good. I've got that as well. But this Flavor Matrix, I'll send you a couple pictures from the book. That's where yesterday when we were cooking in bacon, that's where the balsamic and the black tea pearls came from, because they both have affinity to tomato.
Oh, I see.
So as a base for, the Bloody Mary being tomato-based beverage, I figured why not make it like a bubble tea? And that's where we created the balsamic pearls for this and the black tea pearls.
So you did like a bubble tea Bloody Mary yesterday?
Yeah. And we were 0.07 points out of the top 10.
That's
I can't believe
awesome.
That's
that.
about as close as it gets.
I can't believe that. I was shocked when you sent me that. I just thought, oh man, is it better to be like dead last rather than a hair's width close to being there, but not quite?
You know what? I had accepted after they ran out the top 10 that I was not in the top 10, and I was kind of confused by it, and I was trying to figure it out in my head. And then a friend of mine sends me a link saying, man, that must really hurt to be that close. 0.07. And I said, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, they posted the scores, and I didn't think the scores would be posted until today. And
Yeah.
then I went back and I looked at it. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And yeah, that's about as close as it gets. But
That's
I mean,
so rough.
I'm obviously on the right track, and as long as I can win a spot back here for the 2020s, because we're back in Dallas, just come back bigger and better and see what category I end up in. Last year it was seafood. This year was bacon. Who knows what they're going to put me in next year.
I do feel like moving around locations affects, it really kind of shakes the list up, because you've got, Kim Bannock, who was the 2017 seafood winner, and then of course top 10. I think she was in 4th place last year. And then this year it feels like the whole list was shaken up. I mean, you guys cooked, you did a fantastic job. Everything tasted great.
Yes.
She took home 15th, which is still very respectable in that huge and very competitive category.
Yeah.
But it's just a little odd, I'm sure, feeling for her. Yeah, I'm sure it was a surprise.
I think that you have to take a look at the talent. And I was told right off the hop, when I first got the golden ticket for winning the Taste of Canada competition online, that bacon was a dogfight this year. And I started taking a look at the people who were pre-registered for it, and even their rankings. And I'm looking like, top 10, this, that, and this person won here, this person won this. And it blew my mind that there was that much talent there. But watching even the scores come in, I thought the scores were actually a bit on the low side, even though there was a perfect 100 that came out of bacon. I think at least one, if not two. But, like somebody was in the top 10 with a 100 for their structure build, but then their signature dish was like an 89.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that was a little on the low side.
And I'm trying to remember Peter Raju, last year's world bacon champion. I think he got 4th.
I think so.
Yeah.
There were about 4 former world champions that all made the top 10.
Right.
And the lone Canadian from Alberta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you met any other Canadian chefs while you're here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, last year, the guys from Quebec, Wally Barbecue, who finished 5th, a great group of folks. And they're set up there if you ever want a bite or a chat or a beverage. I'm sure they're more than welcome to
Nice
talk
beverage.
barbecue and share with you. And you run into a few of them. There's a couple people running around with Team Canada jackets. It kind of amazes me that some of the places and regions will send full teams. So they've got, like the Team Indiana and Team this and Team that. And it just seems like in Canada, we just don't seem to do that anymore. Everybody just kind of comes down individually, and it'd be great if they did, Team Alberta, Team Saskatchewan, Team BC, Ontario, wherever, PEI, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia.
Right.
British Columbia. You want me to continue with the provinces?
Well, I want to go back to the beverages that you keep talking about. So what was the beverage you had to use in your Bloody Mary?
We didn't have to use any beverage in
What
our
did you
Bloody
choose to use?
What I chose to use was a cucumber and lime infused vodka, and then this jalapeno spirit that they gave us. I used that, plus because it's Texas and you really wanted to kick, just a hint of 151 moonshine.
Yes, absolutely. You
Which
have
was
to do
bought on
that.
the shelf. It wasn't bought from some backwoods barefoot hillbilly. It's legitimately purchased.
You never know, the barrier to entry, especially now in Texas with the small businesses. It could be some, barefoot, no pants dude.
But as long as they put a label on it,
Exactly.
and a tracking code, everything's copacetic.
Well,
That's right.
the Texas Hill Country distillers provided the jalapeno spirit, and we had a chance to talk with their distiller at the open night that they
The welcome party.
the welcome party. And so their spirits are something I've never heard of. They are distilled from cactus. There's no grains.
So they're distilled from a sugar wash, but partially also from the cactus or the jalapeno or the whatever other flavor that they're infusing. They put that right into the fermentation mix.
Yeah. So for a lot of our gluten-free listeners out there that have trouble finding spirits that are not made from grains, especially if they have severe celiacs, that's something that you can use. I mean, my sister has celiac. So I texted her and I'm like, hey, Texas Hill Country Spirits is totally gluten-free. And they have a really, really great flavor that goes well in a lot of different cocktails.
And you know what? The owner, John, he was telling us, and I actually found this quite interesting, the only fermentables going into the pot are sugar and whatever that flavor is. So sugar and prickly pear cactus, sugar and jalapenos. Those are your fermentables. And I found that fascinating. What it means is the spiciness of the jalapeno doesn't come through because they're not adding it at the end. They're adding it at the beginning. And so all of the capsaicin, which is an oil, is being left out of the distilling process.
So you have jalapeno flavor without the heat. For
Exactly.
folks that like jalapeno Bloody Marys or want a more pepper vodka kind of cocktail, that would work really well. The gin that they make is actually from Texas cedar berries.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of using the traditional other herbs, juniper berries. And then they added some citrus to it. And so it was a really great flavor. We really liked it. So just a shout out to Texas Hill Country Spirits for all the time we took from them. They were trying to serve and we just kept asking questions. Really nice guy. So it's available in Texas. They can't ship out yet. So
You see, the first time I've ever seen it and tried it was yesterday when they put it in the pantry for us to be able to use and take. And the first sip is what made me absolutely just kind of change
what you're doing.
direction with my plans, because it was originally just going to be the shine and the vodka, the flavored vodka, and that jalapeno just gave it a really nice undertone. And
It was great.
yeah, it was an awesome addition.
Yeah.
And not too grassy, by the way.
No.
You know how jalapeno sometimes can taste like a green pepper if it's not quite mature enough? And I hate that. I hate it when I get jalapenos that taste that way. I don't like the grassy. But fortunately, this didn't really have too much of that. It was a little bit earthy, but then it had the sweetness, It was just a really nice balance.
Now, you cooked with Fluger bacon. How do you feel that contributed to your dish?
it was a good bacon because a lot of times the bacons you buy in the grocery stores can just get that over processed kind of texture to it. And they're really thin slices that don't always hold up when you're cooking. And I thought that it wasn't over salted and there was a good underlying, like just a little bit of smoke on there. And we ended up using, I think, 8 or 9 different types of bacon in our dish by the time it was all said and done.
Sure. But I really
it was
think
nice that Pfluger was able to be a little part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it had those big, like you said, the big chunks really came in handy.
They're very meaty. It's not just fat with little strips of meat. It was good, thick, meaty, heavy pork flavor. It was great.
And the guarachol that I used, now that was pretty much fat. But
that was delicious.
That's pork jowl bacon.
Pork jowl bacon.
As far as I'm concerned, that's bacon.
That's bacon.
Like pancetta, Italian bacon, that's bacon.
Yes.
That duck bacon, I have to admit, it was a little fragile. I had a few pieces where coming off of the grill, it stuck a little bit and it just tore apart. And I ended up cooking that entire pack, candying it and cooking the entire pack and then just trying to find like the best looking ones because they ended up being really kind of fall apart. I was surprised by that. Maybe I shouldn't have been. I don't know. Because
you got to remember, I mean, much like turkey bacon and chicken bacon, it's not like pork belly where you're taking the bacon from. And it's a constructed bacon.
It's true.
So they do have to break down the meat to a certain degree to get that consistency and the texture and what they need to make their bacon.
Right.
It's like when you make eggplant bacon. It's just a flavor you're putting into it and you're calling it bacon.
Yeah.
But purists out there will want to punch you in the mouth for that.
Well, the problem with most of this bacon stuff is that all they do is just put a whole bunch of salt in it, maybe a little artificial smoke flavor. I don't like that. And so it's kind of like, why are we using this bacon substitute? I mean, I get it. It has its place in a vegan dish or something, you know, sure, an eggplant bacon. Why not? We'll give it a try. But more often than not, when you see the pre-made stuff, I feel like that's all it is. You know, you look at the ingredient list and it's like, yeah, it's just salt and nitrates and that's kind of it. Maybe some artificial smoke flavor.
See, I come from a long line of farmers from Barry's Bay, Ontario, which is considered the Polish capital of Canada. There's a little trivia thing for you there.
Nice.
And from the farm that my Uncle Raymond and my grandparents owned originally, when they first settled in the area, they make their own bacon. And to this day, my cousin Jimmy's bacon that he smokes in Timmins is it's fantastic.
A small batch gets.
Oh, yeah. And it's not as hard as people think to do things like bacon and even prosciutto. I mean, if you have a little space in your fridge, we
did that
prosciutto in a matter of weeks.
We made our own duck prosciutto and we were thinking the same thing. I mean, it took time, but it really didn't even take up that much space. It was really quite easy when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, shout out to Duck Char for the duck breast that they sent. And we made delicious prosciutto with it. It's got a really nice fat layer. And by the time that had finished aging in the back of the fridge after 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
It was like butter. I was so impressed. So,
but like you said, I mean, really not technically difficult. It takes time, but not really time consuming.
No, you just have to have space in your fridge.
What it takes is a passion to try these things.
Right.
Because, there's a good chance you're going to ruin a piece of meat. There's a good chance that you're going to make something stinky. But if you do it safe, and I mean, now with YouTube and, you know, the videos online, the blogs you can follow, it's easier than ever to be able to do things like your own fermentation, your own cured meats, like even making your own ketchup.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for people who have dietary restrictions, you know, like you were talking about the grains, the celiac, the GMO and all that, you absolutely can tailor just about any product out there to your own dietary restrictions if you take the time to make it yourself. Salsa, cutting back sugar and things like ketchup. You know, beer vinegar. That is fantastic for anybody who does like microbrewing and craft brewing like in their own home. You make a fantastic vinegar. Yeah. With beer.
Sour beers make really good vinegars, and you can use them where you would any vinegar.
We talk about probably the last 4 episodes we've talked about this, but just real quickly, we made a chimichurri using a 2014 sour beer called a La Folie. And it just worked perfectly. It was like it was a perfect accent. It had that sourness, you know, not quite the same sourness of a vinegar. So it wasn't like it was a beer that was turned into vinegar like you're talking about, but it had that sour aspect and kind of brought another depth of flavor, you know?
It's not like wine that's gone past its age. You know, you're actually trying to create this product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I actually want to get back to something that you said about the food and dietary restrictions. You were talking a little bit with me yesterday about some of the chip wagons and the convenience trailers that you've been to, where they actually address those things. And you actually talked about cooking something that was vegan in one of those. And of course, one of our sponsors is Gem City Fine Foods. You can find them at gemcityfinefoods.com. They have a dedicated gluten-free and nut-free facility. Mm-hmm. And they even have some dedicated vegan desserts that they've sent us, and they were soy-free, dairy-free, nut-free. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe how good they were. And so anybody that's looking for a dessert, but they have those dietary restrictions, they definitely have to go and check them out at gemcityfinefoods.com, or you can purchase it on Amazon. But I want to hear about your experiences going to some of those sorry, I keep wanting to call them food trucks. Some of those stands.
Yeah, they're chip stands. They're food trucks. I mean, the name is pretty interchangeable, right? Mm-hmm. It's a place where people can sometimes have a mobile truck, sometimes with our health unit restrictions. If you jack your trailer up off the ground so that you can free turn the wheels, then you're allowed to cook from scratch.
Oh.
But if your wheels are on the ground, you have to use processed foods. Like already pre-made burgers or whatever. So the health unit's a little funny when it comes to the regulation of things like chip stands and chip trucks. And that's why people will go to the point where they'll jack up a trailer, then they'll build a stand around that trailer, the food truck.
Wow.
So with the vegan options, more and more you're seeing that. And a few years ago, the first one that we came across was Kara's Rocket Luncher in Sudbury. They had vegetarian and vegan on the side of their truck as an option, and they said that they had to take that sign off the truck because of the stigma that it created, because people would come by and say, oh, that's the vegan truck, we don't want to eat there. Oh, meanwhile they're churning out porchetta sandwiches and meatball subs and things like that. But because they had posted that was one of the options, it actually ended up hurting them a little bit.
Wow.
But I think that the trends now are starting to come back around, so more people are being accepting of that. Sarah's food truck in Elliott Lake, that's one of the ones that we did this year. They just started, and she calls herself a freegan.
Freegan?
she's a vegan, but she will still turn to meat. But they offer both the vegan options for people, the gluten-free and everything. And then they offer things like that shepherd's pie poutine that I was talking about.
Right.
But yet you can still get your jackfruit tacos.
Oh, jackfruit tacos are so good.
Yeah,
they are my new favorite sneaky food.
As a matter of fact, our contact for the Innovative Group, Jama over here, who's been incredible this week, she considered herself a freegan. And I mean, I've heard the term before, but I always thought freegan meant I'm a vegan unless it's free. You know what I mean?
That's kind of how it worked out for her yesterday. She was eating the pancetta and the sauce. So,
well, but that's
and
why they
the
call
anchovies.
Right, exactly. Sometimes those dietary restrictions do come down to diet. Sometimes people just find if they eat too much red meat or any red meat, it hangs on them, Fortunately, I'm not one of those people. Unfortunately, sugar does bad things to me, so I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah. You won't be finding us in the dessert category.
I wish. We're going to be talking to Angela Cutlass here at some point. She competed in dessert this year and want to hear how that went for her. Man, some of these turn-ins, you guys, have you been seeing the photos online?
The stuffed cookies were interesting.
Yes, they were. And the sandwiches, I was expecting all of the Cubans to look obviously not the same, but I mean, they're all going to be Cubans. But man, there was such a variety. It was crazy.
Everybody's take on it.
Well, you got to go big or go home, basically. I mean, number one, you're in Texas, but at the end of the day, you're at the World Food Championships. You're not at a backyard barbecue potluck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to bring your A game when you're down here. A lot of people invest a lot of time and money just to come down here. And for people who don't have sponsors, it's not like they have the opportunity to just throw that money around. But they come down here for that chance, that opportunity. It's like going to a tryout for the NFL or the NHL.
Right.
You hope as a walk-on, you just might attract some attention and maybe get yourself that break. And I think that's what a lot of people are here for. Yeah, it's fun for us. Yeah, it's a social environment. But at the end of the day, this is an amazing networking experience, and it's an opportunity to make an impact with your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's not a lot of events out there where you can have that duplicity where, your ability to network here is kind of a fallback. You know what I mean? You're here first and foremost to cook and compete. But when all else fails, you can still be walking around, talking to all the vendors, talking to all other competitors, making those connections. And it's like they say, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And fortunately for me, I knew you, and then you know lots of stuff.
I know some stuff, not everything.
You know enough to be dangerous. Bagels are a pretty unique skill.
I don't think we've ever tried to make bagels, have we?
No.
That might have to be on the bucket list. We'll see.
I can make a cloud egg. I can't make a bagel. Bagels are they're my nemesis. And I went so far as to buy a book called The Bagel Bible, and I followed it to a T with the recipe. And they still just don't turn out for me. I don't know. Well, it's my nemesis.
Know your strengths.
Yeah.
We've got one.
Is not it.
Well, we've got one for you. The weekend after we get back, the 26th, is the unofficially official, pardon my fork, pumpkin spice day.
Right.
And we're headed over to a friend of ours' house. It's actually going to be a lot of outdoor cooking. And, gosh, I haven't done much with that event invite. I'm sorry, you guys. If anybody watching has been over to that event invite, I want to put some more stuff on there, but I want to see some of the really cool interesting pumpkin spice stuff that you guys can find.
Interesting, unique, scary.
We're planning on incorporating
scary spice.
Yeah, exactly.
Pumpkin's my favorite Spice Girl.
Yes.
It's like Pete Best to the Beatles.
Pumpkin's my favorite Spice Girl. I want that on a shirt.
Just off the top of my head, if you're talking about flavoring things with pumpkin spice, you wouldn't want to do anything to fish or lobster. It's far too delicate. But
right.
I think that pork would be a natural fit for that.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
So there's your pork belly or your bacon.
You can
pumpkin
do
spice bacon.
I want to do some St. Louis ribs with pumpkin spice on it.
That would probably work.
Could you do a pumpkin spice sauce with seafood?
Oh,
like
I don't know,
pumpkin...
because you got to remember you're putting a lot of nutmeg and that's a really heavy. I mean, nutmeg goes into bechamel. Maybe you can make a really light bechamel, but you'd have to tone down some of the heavy spices that are in.
You'd lean more pumpkin and less spice in your bechamel?
Probably, if you could pull that off. Well, you could make a gnocchi out of it too.
Oh.
Oh, that's true.
Again, make your pastas.
I would love to try making
Cornbread.
that chickpea pasta again. I actually had quite a bit of fun. You showed me how to make the thumbprints in the palm of your hand.
Yep. Well, that's what they are. Orchetti are little thumbprints.
Yep.
Right.
And so you get your little Italian nonas who will sit there and just... you can watch this on YouTube if you really have just no... If you have nothing to do, there's video of these little nonas who are like, bloop, 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 just putting them out in such an incredible pace that there's no way I could keep up to it.
That's so great.
If you want to watch, like, seriously, an exercise in cooking, just watch an Italian grandmother. Yep. And it's like when it comes to the pasta dough yesterday, how I describe it, I'm not so much one for doing exact measuring. I go by the concept of Nona hands. So you can feel when a dough is right. You can feel when that pizza dough is ready, when that pasta dough is ready, just by the texture and the breakdown. And then, of course, the old light test, holding it up.
Right.
If you can see through it like you're looking through a piece of paper, then you've done a good job. But if you see those big dark lines and streaks still in it, keep working your dough.
Right. That's a good way to go. And
the
of course,
Nona test.
We didn't have enough time yesterday to let it rest in the way that you wanted it to. Were you a little surprised that it held together?
I was pleasantly surprised that it held together, but just the way that you were putting together with no eggs, I mean, you knew right off the hop it was going to be like a gnocchi dough.
Right.
I mean, there was no potato in it, but that's the chickpea and the potato chips really were what was building that up. So, and that's all it was that was in there was basically the chips, the chickpea flour. There was a little bit of white flour, and then there was water.
Right.
And mix.
Right. But then normally you'd want something like that to rest for a little bit, wouldn't you?
Oh, you want it to rest so that it can get light and puffy and a lot softer. But we, again, considering that it had the texture of a gnocchi, I think that it paired really well with the sauce and that little crumble on top. Mm-hmm. The only thing that would have been nice is if we would have maybe made a chimichurri with the cilantro and the green onion just to give it a little bit extra brightness.
Well, if we can get our hands on some pork today, I think I'd like to make it a chimichurri if we still can, we'd need something sour. I don't know if we've got any vinegars yet, but what we plan on doing is after the burger category, which of course Cory Ann and I are competing in with Suzanne Duplantis. We're really looking forward to that, right, honey?
Mm-hmm. And actually, it's coming up really soon.
Oh, yeah, it is. Cory Ann's just showing me the time. We're going to have to wrap this up here pretty soon.
Good, because I was feeling like a third wheel at this point here. Oh, you want me to leave now?
No.
We do have to go.
We are going to be gathering up all of the stuff that's kind of left over from the burger competitors and seeing what we can do with that this afternoon for another cook. And by the way, this pasta that we're talking about, this demo that we did yesterday, we live streamed the whole thing. So if you want to see any of it, you can head over to my Facebook, or we shared it over on Pardon My Fork on Facebook, and check that out. One more time, I want to give a big shout out to you, Chris. Thank you. I appreciate everything you've done.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you, because if it wasn't for you and Patrick and Cory Ann yesterday, I really probably would have been sunk in bacon. And that's going out to you, Joe and Kevin, for leaving me high and dry there with your work commitments. I'll remember that.
That's all right. The Americans stepped in to help.
You go.
Brad and Ryan as
just
teachers.
like we did in World War II.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah?
On that note.
Really? Do I have to remind you of Juno Beach?
No.
I know my Canadian military history. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm sorry. Who achieved their D-Day objective? Who did that?
I wasn't going to talk about the D-Day practice.
Oh, all right. Canada.
On that note, I want to one more time thank our fine sponsors over at Gem City Fine Foods. Find them at gemcityfinefoods.com. Pfluger Bacon, find them at pflugersbacon.com with an S. J. Christopher Co. Rubs, find them at jchristopher.co. And of course, GBX Custom Cookers, find them on facebook.com/GBX Custom Cookers. Once again, you guys, thanks so much for being here. Oh, Chris, throw out your Instagram handle, buddy.
Mask_Chris. Once you can find me on Instagram, you can see all the stuff that we do with our Broken Antler barbecue team. And usually I link a bunch of stuff off there as well to Off The Chip Wagon. If you have access to Eastlink Cable, you can watch it coast to coast in Canada on demand. And of course, you can maybe... And I know it's kind of an oxymoron to say, of course you can maybe, but unbeknownst to Eastlink, sometimes things pop up on YouTube, like the first 2 seasons, if you look carefully.
All right, there it is, folks. Hey, thanks again, you guys, and we will catch all of you later on. Have a good one.